Alrighty, so I think we're in a good place to go ahead and get started. We'll let folks continue to trickle in. But again, welcome to today's webinar with 3C Logic. Our topic today is integrating voice and ServiceNow, contact center workflows you didn't know were possible. So welcome everybody. My name is Diana Del Solar. I am a member of the marketing team here at 3C Logic, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Just some quick housekeeping items before we get started. For one, this session will be recorded, so it's being recorded at this moment, and we will email that out to you all tomorrow. So you'll be able to go back and revisit anything in the session that we talk about today, or if you're interested in sharing this recording with colleagues, you'll be able to do that as well. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of our presentation today. So there will be time for some questions. So as we go through our presentation, turn those beautiful brains on, start thinking about what you might be more curious about, and then we can answer those questions in the Q&A box towards the end of the presentation. And that's all for housekeeping, so we can dive right in. So we can start off by meeting our guest today. As I mentioned, my name is Diana, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. But the true star of our show is Abid Hoke, who is a Senior Director of Project Implementation at 3C Logic, and definitely the guru behind the workflows here that we're going to be talking about today. So hi, Abid, thank you for joining us.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining.
And if you are not yet familiar with 3C Logic, 3C Logic is the premier voice enabling solution that natively integrates with ServiceNow. As a premier ServiceNow partner, the 3C Logic Cloud Contact Center platform natively complements ServiceNow's existing digital channels and workflows, which is exactly what we're going to be diving into today. So before we start looking at, we've got a lot of really great demonstrations to show you guys, but before we start going there, I just want to lay a little bit of groundwork about ServiceNow and voice. So if your organization is already leveraging ServiceNow, you know that it's definitely an incredibly powerful tool and has been dubbed the platform of platforms. So there's a whole host of arenas that I'm sure many of you are familiar with that organizations can use ServiceNow for. So that's customer service, IT service management, HR service delivery, kind of anything you can think of. And it's pretty applicable to basically any industry. So if you are an enterprise organization that has data, that has processes, ServiceNow is probably relevant to the work that you're doing. Some of the key functions and areas that enterprises use ServiceNow for include managing valuable data. So whether that's data about your customers, so it can be utilized like a CRM, or data about the status of a project or an issue, ServiceNow is really where you can manage all of that information. ServiceNow also prides itself on the powerful workflows and automations that it has. So it's great that you have all of this data, wonderful, but you can also utilize that data. So you can convert that into triggers and actions that can eliminate a lot of those manual processes that you might have otherwise. Enterprises are also using ServiceNow as their single source of truth. So increasingly, enterprises with all of this information, all these processes are trying to get everything into one location. So ServiceNow is definitely a place for that, and that brings a lot of efficiency to enterprises. And then also with ServiceNow, companies can deliver personalized customer as well as employee experiences. So it's not just that external processes, but also those internal processes as well, by using all of that really rich data and those workflows. So if you are already using ServiceNow, this is probably not news to you. In fact, you may also just be feeling like, I know there's a lot I could be doing with ServiceNow, and there's more I could be doing with it as well. There's a lot of powerful possibilities. And so it's not uncommon for people to be thinking of like, okay, what can I get more out of the investment that I've already made, when the possibilities are nearly endless. But there is a big piece that is missing from ServiceNow to this wonderful puzzle, and that is voice or the contact center. So certainly digital channels and automation and self-service, that is all really powerful and possible within ServiceNow, has definitely transformed how an organization can serve its customers or its employees, but that digital aspect alone is definitely not enough. Voice is still very much a critical part of the customer experience and the customer journey. We've all been there where you're trying to resolve an issue and you're struggling, and maybe you've tried the digital channels and at some point you just want to talk to somebody. So voice is still a very critical piece, even though there's definitely a lot more use of digital channels and automation. And in fact, 87% of companies rely on voice despite that emergence of the digital channels and automation. So both are extremely valuable. And the truth is that they really need to just come together and work side by side. So that's where 3C Logic comes in. We believe that your contact center should be very much a part of your digital transformation. It shouldn't be separate from all the work that your enterprise is doing with ServiceNow. Your contact center, and that means your agents and your customers or employees who are calling in, should reap the same benefits that the rest of your organization is within ServiceNow. And it should and it can. So you can extend that value of that ServiceNow investment by natively integrating voice so that you're leveraging those existing workflows and digital channels and all that ServiceNow data within your contact center as well. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on today in our webinar. So I'm going to pass the mic to Abid in just a moment to walk through some of these common use cases that you're probably seeing in your contact center, kind of just everyday things that happen, and we'll demonstrate how ServiceNow, that integration with ServiceNow can really transform that experience. So in each case, you'll see we're kind of would be addressing different customer journeys at play. So whether a caller is trying to call in and just self-serve, whether they really just want to talk to an agent, or if they're going to be leaving a voicemail with a contact center, we'll walk through different examples that speak to each of those. And I also just want to call out too that here we are in November, end of year, kind of entering the holiday season. So we also recognize too that right now is just a really hectic time for contact centers. So if you're kind of feeling the weight of that, if you are a contact center manager of like higher call volumes, agents taking or trying to take vacations and that sort of thing, I think a lot of these things that we'll go through will resonate with you and help you maybe see how there's some ways that you can relieve some of the pressure that you might be facing right now, just as the contact centers are really up and running at this time of year. So yeah, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to Abid to walk us through some of these workflows.
Perfect. Deanna, thanks so much for that intro, and thanks for laying that groundwork. Like Deanna mentioned, it's this time of year where there's a lot of call flows that we need to take into consideration. And we'll go through some of these examples that, again, may resonate with a lot of the individuals watching today. So the first one that I want to talk about, the first journey that we want to go through is going to be a system outage. Now, a system outage for anyone involved is a frustrating experience. What I want to focus on for today's session specifically is looking at an outage from not just the customer's perspective, but also from the opposite spectrum, the agent perspective. We'll go through that journey today. We'll see what it's like and what we need to make sure to focus on from when a call comes in from a customer, but also what the experience will be like for the agent themselves, or at least from helping the agent perspective as well. Let's paint the picture of the situation. The customer is trying to access their Tableau server or their Tableau, and they're not able to do so. It's a frustrating situation. But as a customer, we want to make sure that we touch on key points. One being, as a customer, I want to make sure that that issue is somehow acknowledged, whether it's going through that digital channel, or in this case, I want to call in and I want to let somebody know that I'm having this issue. And two, I want to make sure that that issue is somehow tracked to the resolution. And now, if we switch gears and we think about it from the agent perspective, the moment a notification has gone out that there's going to be an outage, I know as an agent, I'm going to be bombarded with phone calls, whether it's the queue is going to be full, or as an agent, I'm going to keep receiving phone calls from individuals most commonly about the same issue over and over again. So how is that managed by the 3C Logic environment or the integration with ServiceNow? The beauty of the way the system is set up, the integration will allow for a customer to call into the IVR, be presented proactively with a notification of an outage. So as someone who's calling in, I'll find out information that it's not just me that's being affected, it may be other individuals that are being affected, and I know the information there. I'll also be presented with the ability to associate that particular call that I made with being tracked to a resolution. Now, from the agent perspective, we're able to help divert some of that call volume. Again, if I'm an agent, I know an outage just went out. I was about to go to lunch, but now I'm not going to be able to do so because I know that there's going to be a high call volume. So helping organizations with diverting some of these calls to self-service is what we're going to show here today. I'm going to switch my screen to the ServiceNow environment, and I'll bring up the outage example that we're going to talk about. It's a Tableau server outage. When I call into the IVR as a customer, we're going to be able to, again, be proactively presented with what that outage is or what's being experienced. I'll be able to get information about that outage. I can see the state of that particular outage. And again, as I mentioned, I want to be able to, as a customer, be associated with calling about that particular outage. So again, tracking that to resolution. So what I'll do now is we'll be able to hear on the IVR what it sounds like to go through that experience as a customer.
Hello. Thank you for calling 3C Logic. You have reached the customer support line. Our system indicates that an outage has been reported. Would you like to hear the latest update?
Yes, please.
We are aware of an issue related to Tableau server outage. Our engineers are actively addressing the outage, and our team will continue to provide updates as they are available. This outage was first reported yesterday at 8:39 p.m. The current state of the outage is open. Thank you for your patience. Was your call regarding this outage?
Yes, it was.
We have automatically created a case for you and associated it with a major outage case. You will shortly receive an SMS for tracking purposes. You will also receive an email and outage article that might help you with your troubleshooting. Would you still like to speak to an agent?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your call. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Perfect. So again, as a customer who's calling into the environment, I was, again, presented proactively with the information about the outage. So I know that it's not just me who's being affected. It may be anyone who's trying to access that particular service or platform. But I was presented with that information. Now I know that it's already being looked at, or there's a ticket that's already open about that. But again, I want to make sure that it's not just anyone who's getting information back or being able to track it. I want to be able to get that information back. So the IVR presented me with the ability to associate that call. We saw on the screen how the information was already pre-filled and presented on the call. But here under child cases, we can see that a associated ticket was created for my specific phone call. So again, I can see the information there. Anyone who's tracking this information can also see where the call came from and the individual contact who called in. Now, the benefit of this is, again, from the organization, you're not being bombarded with phone calls in a queue that would be presented as repeat calls, different individuals who are calling in about the same issue. But if we think about it from a resolution perspective, let's say we do resolve this particular outage. Not only do we resolve the outage, we have been able to now track who that outage may have affected, right? So from a customer satisfaction perspective, you can now see that, okay, it was Abid and Diana and a bunch of other people that may have called in and faced that same issue. We would be able to follow up with those individuals and get feedback or at least show that that resolution has been presented to that user, so we can get satisfaction from that. So we track that to resolution. The next very common use case that we want to highlight, or contact center workflow that we want to highlight, is an existing record or an existing contact within ServiceNow. Being able to say that from a customer's perspective, we're calling into our help desk environment, and I simply want to get information about a ticket that's already existing within ServiceNow. the beauty of the way that the integration works here is an individual or a customer will be able to call into the environment and get the latest updates on a case that was opened on behalf of that caller. Now, in this example, we want to make sure that, if I'm calling in and I already have my information within ServiceNow, or I already have a ticket open within ServiceNow, what's the easiest way to have that experience, or what's the easiest way to get that information presented via the IVR? As a customer, I'll be presented with my name, so I know that there's verification there. But again, for security purposes, we want another layer of verification. So we'll be able to put in or input an employee ID to verify who the caller is. Now, once I do that, maybe I just simply want to get the latest updates or the latest comments on the ticket. I can get that information, but let's say that's not enough for me. I want to be able to get that, and if it's not enough, I want to be able to talk to an agent. So in this case, let's paint that picture. A customer is calling in and they're having issues with their Wi-Fi. I'll call in as the customer. I'll make sure that I get verified. So again, within the IVR, I'll be verified via ServiceNow. And then once I have my issue or my update for my issue presented, I want to get the latest comment. And in this case, if that comment wasn't enough for me, I want to be able to speak to an agent. So again, what we see on the screen now is our ServiceNow environment. But what we'll focus on is after we receive the information of our update on that particular record, we're gonna wanna speak to an agent. So what we'll show here is an actual phone call that gets presented to the user. So let's close this out and see what that experience is like.
Hello, Abid Hulk. Thank you for calling ServiceNow. You have reached the customer support line. We recognize your phone number, but for additional security, please input your 4-digit PIN.
Do I input my PIN for verification purposes?
You have been verified. Our system indicates you have an open case. The description is Wi-Fi issues after router upgrade. The status of the case is awaiting info. If you are calling about this, please press 1. Otherwise, press 2 for something else.
I'll press 1 because that's what I'm calling about.
To hear the latest comment on this case, press 1. Otherwise, if you would like to speak to a support specialist, press 2.
I want to speak to a support specialist, so I'll make sure to mark myself available.
Here, your case was updated on November 5th, 2021, with the comment, network team has identified that the issue is related to a firmware upgrade required on the router. The upgrade should be completed by the end of the week. If you would like a text message with a link to the service portal to respond, press 1. Otherwise, press 2 if you would still like to speak to an agent.
Yeah, I definitely want to speak to an agent. So I'll press 2.
Our representative is currently on the line with other customers. We value your time and thank you for holding. Someone will be with you shortly.
So we can see here, as an agent, I'm being presented that phone call. I'll place my call on mute so we don't hear any echo. But again, as an agent, I've now received a phone call. So again, the benefit of doing the integration with ServiceNow and 3C Logic, we're able to see that from a customer perspective, we were able to call in. My information was already pre-existing. I was able to verify myself as a caller. And I was able to, again, if I just needed self-service, get the information directly from the IVR. But again, if that information was not enough, I want to be able to still speak to an agent. I selected option 2, and now I'm presented to an agent. Now, what we're seeing on the screen now is the agent perspective. As an agent, I know that an individual is calling in, and in the background, 3C Logic has automatically presented the ServiceNow interaction on the screen for me. I know that the caller is Abid Hoke, and I can see the phone number that that individual called in from. Now, what is this individual calling about? I can also get that information by selecting my related tasks. And I can see that currently Abid has a case that's opened about Wi-Fi issues. And again, if you guys remember what we heard on the IVR, we heard that the last update was about a week ago about the network team has identified that the issue is related to a firmware upgrade required on the router. The upgrade should be completed by the end of the week. But again, we haven't heard any updates since, so that's why I want to speak to the agent. So we can see here how the agent is able to have all that information at their fingertips the moment that they answer that phone call. Once I speak to the individual or the customer, I'm able to end that phone call, and we're presented in wrap-up mode. This is where, again, within ServiceNow, the agent is able to manage the information that they need to update within ServiceNow. I can go ahead and select a result code of what that call was or how that outcome of that call was. I can select some notes. I can say this is our call for and I can finalize the call. Now, again, all of that information will be presented right into ServiceNow for me. So if I go to the details, and let's get our phone logs here, we can see the last phone call that came in was from Abid Hoke. And I can see all the information associated to that phone call. If we want call recordings, the start time, the end time of that information, we're able to get that directly within ServiceNow. Now, the phone logs themselves are also very beneficial for organizations because you can utilize phone logs to run reports. So if we need to run call time reports, if we need to run reports on how many incidents or cases have been open, you'd be able to leverage the phone logs in that manner as well. So again, adding to the benefit of the integration with 3C and ServiceNow. The next call example or workflow that I want to highlight is voicemail transcription. Now, again, going back to what Deanna mentioned earlier, this time of year with individuals taking off, we have long weekends, maybe hours of operations are affected by the holiday season. It's going to be very common where we receive voicemails, whether it's after hours or if individual queues are not able to be managed because we have, let's say, a low number of agents or a high number of call volume. That's where this voicemail transcription will come in as a very beneficial component to the integration. Let's paint the picture for this scenario. An employee is trying to work on making changes for requesting time off on their employment portal. They've been trying to do so, they're not able to do so, and they call in after hours. Let's say they call in after hours and they leave a voicemail. By doing so, if it was an environment that's not integrated with 3C and ServiceNow, that voicemail is a completely different silo than ServiceNow. So that data is not integrated. That data does not live within ServiceNow. The beauty of the way the integration is set up with 3C and ServiceNow is if someone does leave a voicemail within 3C, that voicemail is now treated just as any other ticket directly within ServiceNow. So you're able to manage it, track it, and then address any workflows that you have within ServiceNow with that voicemail ticket. The next benefit that you can think of is the fact that if someone comes in the next business day and we have 20, 30 voicemails to listen to, there's a lot of white noise and voicemails that you have to listen to try to interpret what's going on. However, with the 3C Logic and ServiceNow integration, you're able to see the exact transcription of that voicemail directly within ServiceNow. And I'll show you what that looks like here. I'll call in and we'll leave a voicemail as a frustrated employee that's trying to make changes to requesting some time off. So I'll call into the service desk.
Thank you for calling ABC Corp. You have reached the employee support line. Press 1 to reach support services. Otherwise, stay on the line for more options.
I'll press 1.
Our representative is currently on the line with other customers. We value your time and thank you for holding. Someone will be with you shortly.
After the tone, please leave a voicemail.
Hey, I'm having trouble requesting time off on the employee portal. Can someone please call me back at 703-975-5503? This is urgent. Okay, maybe I didn't sound too frustrated, but again, you get the point. I want to leave a voicemail where someone is able to see that information, and then I said it's urgent, so they should be able to see that and give me a call back. So if we jump over to ServiceNow, we can go to under phone logs, we can see there's a voicemail tab. I'll go ahead and select voicemail. Oh, we already have it up. Under voicemails, we can see here, let me just refresh. That's our latest voicemail. And if I can select that, we're presented with the voicemail ticket within ServiceNow. So again, it's not something that's living in a silo outside of your rich data of ServiceNow. It's living directly within ServiceNow. So again, you can manage that ticket as if you would manage any other ticket within ServiceNow. I have details of that voicemail. I can see who called in. I can see the contact, the phone number of that particular contact, when they called in, the recording of that voicemail. Again, we don't want to take away the fundamentals. You're able to still hear that recording. But you can see here that we have transcribed that voicemail that I just left, where it says, hey, I'm having trouble requesting time off on the employee portal. Can someone please call me back on 703-975-5503? This is urgent. So again, if I'm the agent or user that's coming in the next business day and I'm trying to listen to a bunch of voicemails, we may have a long list of voicemails. I'm not having to do that anymore. I'm able to leverage ServiceNow. I live in the same space. I can listen to that, or I can just see the transcription directly within the record of choice. So those are the three scenarios I wanted to share with everyone today. What are the benefits of voice enabling ServiceNow? We talked a little bit about that, right? The three scenarios are very good examples of how we can deliver more efficient interactions for not just callers, but also agents, right? We want to look at it from both perspectives. Not only that, the 3C Logic and ServiceNow integration complements the existing digital workflows that are already within ServiceNow, whether it's chat or email. We also empower organizations to manage the customer journey or customer experience directly from within ServiceNow. One thing I didn't show everyone today in detail, but I'll definitely be able to show now, is the fact that if you're a supervisor or manager within the environment and you need to be able to, let's say, make a workflow change or a call flow change of an IVR, you don't have to exit the environment. You don't have to exit out into a different application. You're able to do that directly from within ServiceNow via the 3C Logic embedded portal. So here you can see this is our 3C Logic admin portal living within ServiceNow. This is our IVR designer. You can come into an IVR designer, say for example, Diana, you don't like the prompt that we present when we have a menu. We can go in here and we can adjust that prompt via our text-to-speech component. So if we say our system indicates, if you want to change the verbiage, you're able to do that on the fly and update right then and there. We also saw in this use case just a few moments ago where we're actually leveraging some variables to pull data from ServiceNow and present that to the caller. When I called in that second scenario, I was presented with my first name and last name. So again, being able to manage that experience is all done, again, directly within ServiceNow. So you don't have to go outside of the platform that you're working in on a daily basis to be able to manage that. Associate call transcriptions and customers on their journey. Again, with the voicemail transcriptions and call recordings, all of that data is now held within ServiceNow. So you know that there's an association to the record with call details that you have happening on a daily basis. The integration with 3C Logic and ServiceNow improves visibility into the contact center environment. Again, it's not two different silos. It's all living within ServiceNow. I'll show, again, if we talk about that embedded portal, being able to see analytics directly within ServiceNow, I can bring up our, let's say, for example, our dashboards. We can see supervisor wallboards or dashboards directly within the environment. If we want to take that one level further, and again, this is just an example of being able to see the data, agent login time, logout time, queue data, that's all available directly within ServiceNow. So you don't have to go elsewhere to manage your day-to-day functionality. Not only that, if we talk about visibility and forecasting, you also have the ability to leverage our advanced analytics or performance analytics. So you can see average handle time, how much call volume do I have on a particular day, and what I should expect for the next few weeks upcoming. So again, all of that embedded directly within ServiceNow. And finally, the most important piece is 3C Logic's integration with ServiceNow extends the investment that you've already made or organizations that have already made within ServiceNow. So again, just extending that benefit a little bit further. And finally, to wrap up, 3C Logic, if you're not aware, is the #1 ServiceNow store integration. We're a premier technology partner with ServiceNow with over 10 years of experience across 5 different continents with over 2,000 companies that are supported globally. And all of that is backed by 3C Logic being built on the AWS cloud. And again, this is something that can be leveraged for any organization with leveraging ServiceNow, whether it's an ITSM group, CSM group, HR group, across the board. It's the same. So the use cases that we talked about today, they're not just for one specific group or one specific module in ServiceNow. This can be replicated across the board for any one of the modules and any one of the teams that would leverage. So.
Great, thank you, Abid. That was really awesome to see those examples really in action. As you all can see, the potential for how these solutions can not only capture and leverage so much of the ServiceNow data that you already have or that your organization already has, and then also convert those into actionable workflows is really powerful. One thing that you mentioned like a number of times, Abid, is really breaking down those silos between your contact center and ServiceNow, where maybe the rest of your organization is operating. We definitely believe that those two things can and should come together. So we're going to open up now to our Q&A session. There's already a lot of really great questions coming in. So if other things have come to mind for you, please add those into the Q&A box that you should see at the bottom of your screen, and we can start to answer those. While those questions come in, we'll also just, Abid, if you want to go to the next slide, we can just share some of our contact information, so you can grab that while we run through some of these questions that folks have. So one question that's coming in actually came in from 2 different people, so definitely some curiosity around this, is if the text to voice and the voicemail transcription works in other languages other than English. Particularly, we have attendees asking about French, or if there are any other languages as well.
That's a great question. Absolutely, you have the ability to leverage multiple languages. What we always like to do is, again, we go through a detailed discovery process to make sure that if we have call flows that are not just English, but obviously if we're servicing a global footprint or global environment, we want to make sure that if there's a call flow for a specific language, whether it be French, Spanish, English, whatever it is, we're able to leverage that functionality for those languages as well. So yes, short answer, you absolutely have the ability to do that.
Awesome. And there's a bit of a follow-up question to that. If so, can it detect the language used in a bilingual environment and properly handle that language transcription?
Yes, so since we're leveraging the transcription, it should be able to, and again, we can confirm and just verify based on the languages that are being requested. But yes, it should be dynamic enough to capture whatever language is being presented, whether it's on voicemail or voicemail transcription, in order to manage that experience. So yes, you should be able to. Again, we just like to go through the discovery process to make sure what languages are we talking about, and how the use case would fit. So yes, short answer, we should be able to do that.
Great. Another question we have here, is the integration managed by 3C Logic or some kind of on-premise infrastructure is required to set up this and integrate with ServiceNow?
That's a great question. Where 3C Logic is fully cloud-based, we know that ServiceNow implementations or ServiceNow is typically always cloud-based as well. So we want to make sure that we stick to that pattern or stick to that path. The typical process for implementation or integration, 3C would request access to a development environment where we would help create that integration for you. Once that integration is created, we would provide you with an update set so that our client or customer would be able to then promote that update set to a higher instance. So there's nothing that's on-prem that needs to be managed. 3C helps or does most of the lifting, if not majority of the lifting. We complete that integration and then hand it off to our client base. Not only that, we want to make sure that you're also able to self-service. So if there's any, let's say we have a particular call flow with integrations to open a case record. You're not just stuck to that IVR flow. You can replicate that particular inbound dip or the screen pop, let's say. You can manage that on different parts of the IVR that as a customer, you'll be able to scale up or down, whatever you choose. So yes, we will create the integration for you. We will pass the update set for our client base, and they'll be able to manage that to their higher instances and customize if needed.
Great. Another question we have is there also easy integration with other types of cases, such as universal requests?
Yes. So again, that goes back to the scoping discussion or discovery discussions, what we typically like to do on the front end. But yes, you'd definitely be able to leverage any record type within ServiceNow. When we go through the discovery process, again, it's very detailed. So if a particular call flow needed a universal request or a request item or whatever it may be, we can highlight this call flow needs to be a request. This call flow needs to be an incident. You'd be able to identify that in advance, yes.
Great. And then Abid, can you talk about some other use cases that we might not have reviewed that customers have found a good ROI with when using 3C Logic?
Yeah, absolutely. Deanna, you mentioned, again, the time of the year, right? This time of the year, we're going on long weekends, we're going on break, we're having good food, and we come back. And the simple things like remembering your password is something that may happen. You don't remember your password. Another use case that we have, and it's a very common use case, is password reset. Now, password reset is something that can be managed directly via the IVR. We saw a similar scenario where a caller can call in, their phone number is verified by ServiceNow, but we still keep a layer of security. So again, just verifying that user via a unique identifier, whether it's an employee number or some secret number that we have within ServiceNow. Once that's verified, we can do a password reset via email or SMS, whatever it needs to be. But where we see the return on investments, I'll give an example. We did an implementation recently where an organization, after implementing password reset, found that on a weekly basis, their incidents increased by 30%. And they came back and said, hey, Abid, incidents are increased by 30%. What's going on? We don't get it. We haven't had this many in years. What we found was, digging into the data, what we found was the fact that agents were answering phone calls, doing password resets, because it's so quick and easy to do the password reset, managing that phone call and then hanging up, but the data was not being captured anywhere within ServiceNow. Now, utilizing 3C Logic's IVR and password reset via the IVR, we were able to see that, again, 30% of interactions were not being captured within ServiceNow because agents were simply answering the call, doing the password reset, and then not updating ServiceNow. So again, agent utilization is still happening, but none of that data is being captured. So again, if we think about return on investments, those agents can be using that 30% in doing other tasks, whether it's resolving another ticket or managing another ticket, because password resets are something that our IVR can manage for you. So that's a good example that comes to mind just when I think about it.
Great, thank you. Another question we have here is, how quick is the process to change the outage recording on the fly once it has been discovered?
It's a great question. So what we leverage in the IVR is the 3C Logic IVR can dip into the outage table within ServiceNow. So imagine we have an outage, we find out, I think it was Jeff that mentioned that, Jeff, you find out that there's an outage, you go to the outage table and you flip the switch. It's literally just saying that this outage or this particular case is now a major outage. The moment that you change that status, it becomes a outage that the IVR can read. And it's almost instantaneous. So whether we want to leverage a status change of major outage, or if you want to simply be able to just go in and update the IVR, just like we saw with how we can manage the IVR, you can do it on the fly via managing the IVR, or the record type, changing that record type status to, let's say, regular outage to major outage. The moment it changed to major outage, the IVR will pick that up and present that proactively to the caller.
Excellent. One last question that I have in here, so if anyone has any others in mind, feel free to add those in. The question is, for integration, do you host in a Canadian data center? I guess a general question about data centers.
Right, that's a good question. So 3C Logic doesn't host any data, or we don't want to capture any data, again, ServiceNow is your source of data, or where we keep all the data. Anything call related, we can find out exactly the setup, if it needs to be in, let's say, Canada, what the regulations or what the setup needs to be in Canada. But again, the data doesn't leave ServiceNow. That all remains within ServiceNow. So again, where your ServiceNow data is held is where it stays.
Someone is curious about licensing fees.
So that's also a great question, right? We want to make sure how much it costs. The best way to get that information, if you do reach out to us directly, or if you want to pass on the contact information, we can have someone reach out to you directly and present you with the licensing costs and fees. That would be the best way to get that information to you.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's it for questions, live questions today. So if more things come to mind, you folks have our information there to reach out to 3C Logic. And you can also get in touch about a free consultation as well, to see what would work best for your contact center and your scenario, whatever it is that you are working with. So with that, yeah, thank you everyone. Appreciate you all joining us today. I know it's a busy time of year, so thank you for carving out some time with us, and thank you for attending. We hope you enjoyed it and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.